welcome to our panel today ahead of our Get Hired workshop. We are really excited for you guys to join us so that we can go through and get some of the secrets and tips and tricks from the guys who are in the business, right? And who are doing that job every day. And really excited to kind of pick their brain a little bit and get answers to questions I'm sure you guys have. And if you have ones that we don't get to, make sure you put them in the chat box so we can get to them. Excited to learn a lot today. We've got two really awesome panelists with us. So I will go ahead and introduce you to who we have, and we'll take a second for them to kind of get us acclimated with their role within their company and a little bit about their background. But before we do that, one more thing. If you haven't gotten registered yet for the Get Hired workshop on the 23rd, make sure that you do. So we'll put a link to that in the chat box so that you can go ahead and get registered. So our panel today, we have Sam and Marcus with us. So let's start with Sam.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for Kayla, obviously, for having me back here. I've done a couple of these. I am relatively newly minted as the military recruiting program manager for Ashley Furniture. I am an executive recruiter. I've been with Ashley 2 years as of yesterday, and really happy to be here. I've been leading our primary efforts with GI Jobs and military hiring over the last probably 12 months. But really excited to continue here. My previous world before coming to Ashley Furniture was in executive recruiting. So I was with a boutique executive search firm prior to that. And then if any of you have read my bio, I have a master's degree in sports management, was actually a college baseball coach before getting into recruiting. So happy to be here. Obviously happy to be working today with Kayla and Marcus, and looking forward to answering questions and hopefully getting everybody hired.
Thanks, Sam. And so next we have Marcus, who's from USAA. So we're excited. We have Ashley Furniture and USAA on today's panel. So Marcus, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Kayla. I appreciate it. My name is actually, well, it is Marcus, but it's kind of like the old movie Stripes, right? When they called him Francis. So nobody really calls me that. I go by Oli. So thank y'all for having me. I manage USAA's military enterprise military hiring strategy. And so that's a fairly large scale program, of course, where I work across all of our different lines of business to identify, different things that the market is looking for. Number one, what are transitioning service members and military spouses and the career goals that they have, and then ultimately trying to find where that entry point is within USAA. And to be honest, I mean, we, of course, USAA would love to hire every one of them, but we know that we can't. So we also work very closely with other companies and organizations to try to help them as well build out their strategy. So that's a little bit about me. I was in the Marine Corps for 25 years, retired in 2016. And so like many of you, I was pivoting, and I was pivoting from what I did in my career in the military, looking into, the corporate America and what they look for. So very open to answering any of your questions, and look forward to the webinar.
Thanks, Oli. All right, so let's jump right into this. So just out of curiosity, before we get into the nitty-gritty, what are some of the hot jobs you guys have? Like, so what are some of the roles that you hire for, or that you see that service members or military spouses are seeking, when they come to your company or they come to your job board? And anybody can just jump in. We'll just kind of make this a little bit of a conversation. Keep it light.
Great. I'll go ahead and jump in and start really quickly. So Ashley Furniture as a whole, most people think of us as a retail organization, and that is great. That is something that we are. But we are also the world's largest manufacturer of furniture. So we make more furniture than anyone else in the world, and we actually sell more furniture than anyone else here in North America. But that means that we operate very large manufacturing sites here in the U.S. It means that we operate very large distribution centers here in the U.S., and we also have one of the largest private held fleets of transportation trucks in the country. And so as we think about bringing military members in to join us, Ashley Furniture's motto in talent acquisition is hire for attitude and train for skill. So there are plenty of individuals every single day who are exiting the military or exiting the service who can come in and get a job at Ashley Furniture. We will teach you about manufacturing. We will teach you about distribution. We will teach you about transportation. As long as you have the right attitude, the right willingness to learn, those are the two things that we bring to the table. And if you say, hey, you can match with us on culture, we can find a spot for you. So lots of individuals that come and join in supervisor or first level manager line roles within manufacturing or within distribution. We also know that many of the members in the armed services have plenty of distribution experience, have plenty of supply chain experience, especially ones who have been stationed overseas. You know, they've been in a facility where they have to monitor inventory. They've been in a facility where they're shipping out supplies to further out outposts. And so those are our skills and qualities that we're targeting and we're looking for members to come and join Ashley.
That's great, Sam. Similar approach, right? A little bit different from USA's standpoint because we are financial services and we're the most highly regulated industry in the world, right? So for us, some of our requirements are a little bit different, but not all of them are as strict as they might come across to be, right? So when you're looking at job boards, you know, what you really need to focus in on is how to eliminate the noise, right? And streamline what you're looking to do. It's easy to go down rabbit holes when you're looking at companies and what their offerings. But you know, in Ashley compared to USA, we might very likely have the exact same roles with completely different titles, right? And so getting a feel for what the industry is looking for is very important. And of course, aligning what your experience and your education is associated to those job profiles. So for us, you know, on any given day, you know, we have somewhere between 200 to 300 different types of jobs. Right now, we just flipped over to the year, so our hiring cycle is catching up. But you know, again, it's, you know, hiring in the market is kind of roller coaster, right? It's got a cycle. Sometimes certain parts of the year have more hiring than other parts of the year, and it really just it is what it is. And so when you're looking at a lot of these different companies, you just need to ensure that you're marketing yourself the appropriate way to ensure that you're aligned to what the company's looking for.
Thanks, guys. You guys brought up so many awesome points when you were just talking. I could go on for days diving into that. But since you bring it up, like the market's changing, right? It's shifting. And since COVID, you know, a lot of companies have been open to remote work, which is great for military spouses, right? So in that lane, if you guys offer any remote roles or any remote positions, can we talk about like what those look like a little bit? And if you don't offer them, if you know of any in the industry with any of the partners that you work with or other employers, what kind of roles have you seen that, you know, are a good fit for remote positions?
I'll jump in and break the ice here. The unfortunate news is that Ashley Furniture generally does not offer any remote roles. Now, part of that is because it's hard to make a couch on your couch and it's hard to sell a couch in your bedroom. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't do these things. That doesn't mean that we're not open to those things. But, you know, 95 or 96% of the Ashley Furniture workforce is based at one very specific location, whether it's a manufacturing site or a distribution site or our new site in Charlotte, North Carolina, that's a sole transportation site. So I may not be the best person to answer this particular question, but we do offer plenty of support for individuals, especially ones that are moving relatively frequently. I do understand that that when you're in the military, you don't really get a choice where you have to go. So we do offer some support for those individuals that are moving to other places in the country. And luckily enough, we sell furniture in about 150 or 160 different countries. So we do have plenty of opportunities for folks that may be looking to go elsewhere.
Yeah, that's some great points, Sam. You know, Ashley obviously is a global brand and a global company. USAA, primarily, we focus in the continental United States on what we do. So that means if you are stationed overseas, or if you know that you're going to be deploying overseas, in our case, that somewhat impacts a little bit of what you're looking to do. The caveat to that, just to speak on military spouses, you know, and I know a lot of companies have gone down this path, and USA sure has, is that we've implemented processes in place so that if a military spouse initially gets a role in a certain location and then their spouse ends up relocating to another part of the country, we have a process in place where they could just submit a request and then allow them to relocate and now work out of that new location. Sometimes that new location means that they're moving somewhere where we don't have a regional office, because we're not everywhere, right? We have very targeted regional locations on where USA is. And if they're outside of those, then they could convert their roles to remote. Again, it's a request process. And USAA, because of our mission and what we do, we fully understand that that is the nature of who we serve. Therefore, it's the nature of our employee base. And so, on I've been monitoring our career site for quite a while over the last few years, pre-COVID, during COVID, post-COVID, and USAA's model pre-COVID, it was primarily on-site and remote. What we saw when COVID hit, is that obviously we leaned a lot more remote. 90+% of the company was remote. But now that we're on the back end of that, a lot of the different companies in the market are starting to bring their people back in. And so in the process of that, we created a third profile, and that was hybrid. And so the hybrid profile for us and an industry definition changes depending on the company. But for us, it means you have to be within a commuting distance of one of our locations, whether it's in San Antonio where the home office is or in any of our regional locations. So it's not uncommon at all for an employee to work in Tampa but be assigned to San Antonio, or work in Phoenix and be assigned to Colorado Springs, right? That's not uncommon. We have a very diverse and distributed workforce. But that's one of the things that we've seen. On any given time, we have about 50 to 60%. I think right now it's about 45% of our job roles are still providing remote opportunities. And so that we anticipate that's going to continue. However, a lot of those remotes have kind of driven towards being hybrids, right? So even though they're able to work from home on several days of the week, the culture of USAA, and I'm sure we're going to get a bit into culture conversations, but the culture of our company is about being immersed in what the company does, right? And so I think for that, the only way to really understand truly the culture of us is to be around other employees and experience that firsthand. So we really have been looking to pull people back into the office, whether it's an in-office or hybrid, but we still offer remote opportunities as well.
That's awesome. It's great to see that companies are making adjustments and being very flexible in their policies and, how they're operating in the workforce. And I want to bounce off these questions for a second because someone brought up a really good question in the chat. While we're on the topic of accommodations and making adjustments to our workforce, someone had asked, Danny asked, what efforts are made to accommodate physical disabilities and limitations in the face of a need of physical presence? So if someone has to go in the office versus being remote all the time, are there any accommodations that your company offers for those with individuals with disabilities?
So sorry.
Did I say that too fast?
Yeah.
If you want to jump in first, Sam, you keep taking the lead, so we're going Bowley first.
Yeah, Sam's been leading the pack here for a bit. Every company, I think, is going to have their own policies, right, on what that looks like. I would argue from just looking at employees for the experience that they provide, right? If you have a disability or something, there's processes in place that allow you, whether you potentially are blind or deaf or whatever your disabilities are, that allow you to be able to work in that environment. Now, some roles, you're just unfortunately not able to do depending on your disability. And so we have teams or a specific team within USAA that supports this specific area, right, to help them really hone in on the types of roles that would be the most inclusive for whatever their disability is. And then if while someone's employed and something happens, a traumatic accident or whatever the case is, which now they have a disability, the same thing applies, right? There are processes in place to support them so that we don't lose them as an employee because we understand the value that they bring to the workforce. I think at the end of the day, without getting into too much details of what that looks like, do the companies have it? I would argue, yes, they do. Every company might have a different process of what that looks like, but arguably they all have some form of a process to support it.
Yeah, I'll echo what Ole shared. We're at a point right now where we want to make sure that we are bringing the top level talent, and we will make obviously every accommodation necessary for someone that needs them. And as we think about the way that we are trying to go out and acquire talent, we're looking for individuals to see what they can bring to Ashley Furniture. And as we think about those items, if we need to make accommodations for a really talented individual, we absolutely will. And then obviously anything in regards to to legal accommodations being made through the state or the universal law that we all uphold to, we will obviously make every ability to do that. The one thing I will mention is because we are such a large organization, we may be able to offer another opportunity that may be a better fit. And that is something that we see at Ashley a lot in regards to internal transfers and bringing individuals on that then start their career in one department and finish their career in a different department because they find something that's just a better fit. And so we're obviously very happy to do that and hold our current employees in very high regard. And in a lot of cases, as I mentioned earlier, you're hiring for the right attitude. We firmly believe that we could teach you the skills to be successful in the role that you want to be in.
Thanks, Sam and Ole. So, keep in mind, if you do, like they were saying, if you guys do have a disability or a need of an accommodation, make sure that you let your employer know. If you don't identify or let them know, then they don't know that the need is there, that, that there's more that they possibly could do to help you. All right, so next question. So ahead of our job fair, right? So let's kind of talk about what that experience is, right? So a lot of people are attending job fairs that are convenient, especially when they're virtual, right? But what are those expectations? Like, are the people that you're meeting with at a career fair, are they going to hire you? Are they not going to hire you? What should an individual expect when they attend a virtual career fair and speak with an individual?
I can start it off. I'll tell you that take the time to make your way around to all the companies, but at the same time, prioritize that. Don't go into the job fair blindly, right? You have the opportunity right now to take a look and see what companies are going to be there as part of the virtual job fair, right? Go to their career sites, right? Do a little bit of research on them so that whenever you show up to the virtual event, you have information that you've already collected to help you ask the right questions. If you go into the job fair and it's pretty much, hey, what kind of jobs do you offer type of scenario, you're not going to get a whole heck of a lot out of the job fair. If you go into the job fair and say, hey, I went onto Ashley Furniture's website and I saw this role that I'm super interested in, can you maybe tell me a little bit more about that role, right? That's a completely different conversation. And so I would say do some research before going onto the actual event itself. And then once you go there, prioritize the companies you want to talk to, right? You can go into their different chat rooms just like you can go to a table at a live event. So prioritize who they are. If Ashley's on the top, or if USAA is on the top, or whatever other companies are on the top, hit them first, right? Ask the questions that you want because you're interested in wanting to learn about those different companies first. But don't just leave and not see what the other companies have to offer as well. I think that's how you're going to gain the best benefit from the event. And look, I manage USA's recruiting events at the national level. So I do it all across the country, and I've seen every form or fashion that you could probably see when it comes to events, whether it's virtual or live. So I would tell you the number one thing that to a company that is a bit frustrating is whenever candidates don't do their homework first, right? Do your homework first. Show up and be prepared, because this is your first impression, right, with that company. So if you show up and you're prepared and that company's like, wow, this guy or gal really knows what they're looking for, I need to pass them on to a recruiter because I know they're hiring in this space, or I need to introduce them to somebody in this area because they're going to have a lot more higher probability of doing it if you come prepared, right? So that's my foot stomper. And then Sam, maybe you have something else to add.
Yeah, coming prepared is just a priority number one in my opinion. And luckily enough, as you guys have seen in the chat, now you know who will be hosting booths at the GI job events, but even at in-person events, if you spend a couple of minutes, and even if you're just looking for basic information, one of the things I talk about with candidates a lot is, where are you going to live? If you're only going to live in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, then when you go to a job board, you should look, okay, what's available in the Dallas-Fort Worth area? And I'm going to say, hey, I'm only going to live here, or I'm willing to live in these other places. Look for some of those jobs that may be available. I will take a different approach, and I will answer I guess the other portion of the question that Kayla asked is, who are you meeting at a career event? And the one thing that I will tell you is, in we'll call it 90 to 95% of cases, you're meeting a frontline recruiter, you're meeting someone in talent acquisition at that particular event, and you're going to need to rely on that person to take your information and pass them to a hiring manager. So for me, I'm having less conversation around, exact jobs and the exact roles and responsibilities for that job. We have 13 other individuals on the professional recruiting staff. So from that particular perspective, I don't know every single job that we have at Ashley Furniture, but I know who to put you in contact with for each and every one of those jobs. And so the one thing that I can tell you is when you're discussing with a recruiter, most recruiters, most of them are external. These are individuals that are going to be probably extroverts. They're going to want to talk to you. They're going to learn about you. They're going to want to ask questions. All of those things are things that they're going to then share with the hiring managers. So from that particular perspective, make sure you're trying to make a good connection. You can worry less about the jobs and less about the actual roles and more a little bit about what does Ashley Furniture have to offer? What does USAA have to offer? What's the culture like? Tell me what your benefit summary looks like. What are some of the things that you can offer to help me, get my next job with your organization? Because unfortunately, I'm not going to be the hiring manager. I'm not the decision maker on whether or not you get hired. I will be the person, however, that will be passing you along to the next person.
That's awesome information. GI Jobs itself has a checklist available for you guys. So the checklist will have some documentation on there of things that you can do to kind of get yourself ahead and prepared for the virtual career fair. And you guys on this, brought up some great points, right? Like, so make sure you do your research, make sure you do your homework, know the roles, ask questions about the company. But outside of that, when it comes to resume preparation or cover letters or things like that, what kind of tips can you give our audience today to help them get prepared with documentation that they may need to bring with them or things that they should have ahead of the career fair or ahead of applying?
Oli, if you don't mind, I'll jump in really quickly. I saw a question in the chat here earlier about resumes, and I think it may have came from Michael Murphy. So Michael, if you're listening, take a look. One of the things I talk about resumes is your resume does not have to be the most beautiful thing in the world. Now, I may be alone in that opinion. I may be different in that opinion. I'm not looking to see what beautiful font that you're using. I'm looking to see what's on it, number one. But then number two, I just want a good timeline of the things that you've done. And I recognize that once you've been in the military and you've had multiple different jobs, you can fill a book with all of the experiences that you have. But when you think about the types of work most individuals are looking for, what have you done most recently? What are the things that you're really proud of? What are some of the major accomplishments that you've had? And if you can fill a one-pager of a resume with some of the really awesome things that you've done, some of the things that you're super proud of, and kind of a timeline of where you've been over the last, 5, 10, 15 years, that's enough for me. And I'm not concerned with what it looks like. I'm not concerned if it's the most pretty. I get a lot of resumes all the time that are just the PDFs of people's LinkedIn profiles, and that's fantastic as long as you have the information.
So, yeah, so maybe a different approach or view, right? For us, coming into a job fair, it's understood that you won't necessarily have a resume that's tailored to a specific job. But I will tell you, do not use the same job fair resume that you're going to use to apply for a specific job, right? Those resumes need to be fully tailored. I always tell folks that the job description is your cheat sheet. And we're trained, since we're little, don't use a cheat sheet. But I'll tell you, when you're looking for a job, it's your cheat sheet. And if you don't use it, you will likely fail, right? And the reason I say that is because all of the verbiage, all of the requirements, education, you name it, the skills that the companies are looking for is in the job description, and that is your cheat sheet. So when you're building out your resumes, yes, you should have a master resume. Yes, you should have, especially going into a job fair, you want to kind of list out your experience. And if you know what you want to do and you know the direction you want to be, then hey, leverage different career sites and different types of roles to build out a project management resume or build out an HR type of a resume, right? So it might not be specific to a role in HR, but it lists out your HR experience. That way, when you go to tailor it to a specific job in HR, you're not starting from scratch. You have about an 80% solution, right? So when you're doing it, I can't emphasize enough, use the job descriptions to build out your resumes. Going into the job fair, you don't want to be a jack of all trades. Many of us coming from the military, we have a lot of broad experience across the different spectrums of our organization, and it makes you come across as being a jack of all trades, right? Well, guess what? Companies are looking for a very specific skill set, right? Sam is looking for very specific skill sets, right? I mean, those skill sets are aligned to the jobs. And so again, it goes back to doing your research. If you go into the job boards prior to going into the event, and you find 1, 2, 3, types of jobs, you're like, that would be a great role for me. Okay, use it, talk to it, build a resume for it, whatever the case is. And that way, when you're speaking to these recruiters who are assigned these job recs and they know what these requirements are, you're speaking the language of that company, right? And you're not like, hey, what kind of jobs you got? We're just always going to point you to our career site. Like, hey, go look at the job board, come back, right? Because on any given day, I mean, we, again, have hundreds of roles. We want to talk to you about what you're interested in, right? Don't ask us what you're interested in. We don't know, right? Come prepared. Say, hey, I am interested in this type of a role. Oh, and by the way, I went to your career site. I saw one of those roles. Can we talk a little bit about that? Absolutely. Now we've got something to talk to, right? Instead of given, in many cases, career coaching, where we're trying to figure out what you want to do and the path you want to go down. I mean, that's a whole different conversation, and a job fair is not the place to really do that. So just giving more tips of the trade.
Absolutely. All of those were the great words of advice, right? So you hit the nail on the head. Make sure that when you're coming to the career fairs, you know what you want to do, or you have some idea, and you've done your research on the positions that are out there. If you're looking for career guidance, you can always tap on like the Veteran Mentor Network on LinkedIn. You can tap on some other nonprofits, community organizations that can help you down that path with career coaching. But when it comes to the career fair itself, you want to make sure that you show up prepared and that you know what you want. And so in that lane, when you guys get registered for the career fair, virtual job fair for the 23rd, make sure that when you're building your profile, you upload your resume. There is a spot to do that if you want to upload your general resume. Recruiters and our attendees of the companies that will be there typically take a look at those resumes ahead of the event, and they can pre-schedule out times to talk with you if they're interested based on the skills that you have on your resume. So super exciting stuff. Now let's jump into what can give our attendees a bit of an advantage when going into these things. Now, we talked about being prepared. We talked about them knowing the job roles. But is there any words of advice that you guys could offer on top of that that can help that individual stand out? Oli?
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. So we talked about being prepared and knowing the jobs that you want to apply for and what the skills are that you bring to the table and doing your research on the company, which are very important and will help you to get, to achieve success. But on top of that, do you have any additional tips or tricks or things that individual can do that will help set them apart from a candidate, like our cover letters or thank you cards, anything like that?
Yeah. I'll start off with, you ask 10 recruiters, you'll get 15 different answers, right? So point being is, this is Oli's version of that. The very first thing you want to do, and this is a life skill, I guess, on top of just a tactic, but is building a rapport and building a relationship with the person that you're talking with right out the gate, right? Companies want to see you working with their company, right? It goes back to the core belief of the culture of that company, right? USAA is a relationship company. I mean, that's what we are. When you call into USAA, if you're a member, right, and you've ever had to file a claim, or you ever had to do anything, it typically comes across more as a conversation than a transaction, right? So for us, it's always about building a rapport. We always recognize your rank. We always recognize, your experience in the military, right? That's all building a rapport with you as you call into the company. So same logic, right? If you're going to be meeting with the company, and this is your very first impression, right? I understand this is a job fair, and everybody going to the job fair is obviously looking for jobs. But if you come across as that's the only thing you care about to the companies, it becomes a bit more of a transaction, right? You're trying to get a job from me versus learning about the culture of the company, learning about what my role is, right? Learning about what does USAA do? I mean, I know them as a bank, or I know them as insurance. What exactly like do they do behind the curtains? Build the rapport, right? And then in the process of doing that is where we learn more about you. And then we start thinking of the types of roles that you would be a good fit for at the company before you ever even present them to us, right? So there's different approaches on how you do it. But I will tell you the more, I guess, professional approach in this type of a setting is just to establish a good rapport with the person on the other end, right? Learn a little bit about what's going on, what they're looking for, and blah, 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 obviously. But at the same time, be prepared to speak to your experience, right? Be prepared as you're going through that. So that's my I guess number one thing is building a relationship before anything else.
You know, I met a recruiter from USAA a couple of years ago, and it reminded me that I very similarly to Rob Gronkowski, I feel like I'm on the outs. I feel like I'm on the outside looking in. I always want to join. I always want to be a part, but can't. And the one thing that I will share with you, and Oli talked about making a connection. I used to have one of my bosses used to talk about jelly beaning, which is admittedly just the small talk portion. And for some people, that is terrifying. My wife has no interest in doing any small talk with anyone. No weather, no nothing. Let's just get right down to brass tacks. But the one thing that I can tell you, and I've seen so many of these people, Monica and Michael and Scott and all those folks who are open to connections on LinkedIn and those sorts of things, you can learn so much about a person based on their LinkedIn. And I'm sure that if you all went to mine, you can see all the things that I'm interested in. You can see the groups that I'm in. You can see some of the other things that I may be interested in outside of work. If you take one small thing, one interest, maybe it's a school that I went to, or maybe it's I met someone who used to play football at Georgia Southern. That was how they introduced themselves. They said, hey, I went to your LinkedIn. I saw that you have a master's degree from Georgia Southern. I went to Georgia Southern. And that was how the conversation started. And we built that rapport immediately, super quick. And so that is something that I can tell you for sure. Look on LinkedIn, check out their profile. And if you can pull one thing that may be in common, that would be just amazing. That's a great way to be able to go through and get that done and kind of make that initial rapport right up front.
Absolutely. That's great advice, right? Making that small talk and establishing a relationship with the individual. So my next question, now we're on the topic of LinkedIn. When I was recruiting, I used to get a lot of messages, right? People asking me, where do I fit in with the company? And you get a ton of messages on top of a ton of resumes, right? As a recruiter or in HR in general. So what words of advice could you give our audience, in addition to making that personal connection, on how to find success on LinkedIn when using LinkedIn as a tool for your career searching? Oli, let's go first.
Yeah, LinkedIn, of course, number one, right, by far of any other professional social platform when leveraging it, right? So I will tell you that to Sam's point, and make sure I'm answering your question right, Kayla. You had mentioned specifically on how to leverage LinkedIn to your advantage, for the lack of better words. Yeah. LinkedIn is a very powerful tool. For those of you who don't know, yes, you can get a year of it for free. If you're, I think your first time using it, whatever, I did that. Probably most of us have, if you're military. But at the end of the day, that is an approach, right? It's not the only approach. It is an approach, meaning if you are looking at a company, like I don't know, other than Sam, right? I don't know anybody that works at Ashley Furniture, right? So if I wanted to work with that company, you have to start somewhere, right? And if you don't know the Sams out there, well, then the next step would be, how do I find them on LinkedIn or some social platform, right? LinkedIn will give you the ability to be able to navigate through that site, find people who work at a specific company. You can even go as far as you can go down into that to hopefully find someone that works at the company that's willing to provide you information about it, right? Or to start. And then, a tip is every time that you end up meeting somebody there, then you just ask them towards the end of that conversation, hey, is there anyone else that you think I should be connecting with that can help me maybe understand a different perspective or whatever about the company? Notice everything has been about the company, at least coming from me. You probably haven't heard very much of me about a job yet, right? It's about the company first. And if you take that approach and you start building rapport with people, they start seeing you in their company. And once they start seeing you in the company is where you start getting your eye opened up to what types of job opportunities they have. Always have those job opportunities in your hip pocket. So if that conversation comes up, but I would argue always start with the company first. And in that process, you'll be surprised. We didn't really talk much about referrals, and I know I'm kind of derailing a little bit from the LinkedIn conversation, but referrals is another way that once you do navigate through like LinkedIn, you identify somebody like Sam, right? And I'm just using, Ashley as the example, right? And you have that conversation with Sam. He already was upfront, said, hey, I'm not a hiring manager, but I can connect you with hiring managers. That's opening the door to, hey, let me learn about you. Let me see if I can garner enough knowledge about your experience. And then let me hand you off to somebody who might be able to impact that. Oh, and by the way, it's still in the same company. And what you start learning is more and more and more about the culture of that company. And you start seeing yourself in that company. And therefore, you start honing in on exactly where you want to be. And LinkedIn is probably one of the very first places you would start that. But it needs to be a two-pronged approach, right? LinkedIn gets you to the person. But at someday, and this is kind of speaking to the introverts, right? You're going to have a conversation with the person, right? And it might be out of your norm. It might be unfamiliar to you, but look, finding a job is the hardest job you'll ever have. And so in the process of doing that, you're going to find ways to navigate through it. You're going to gain more confidence in the process. You're going to, be able to track all these different conversations. And eventually, once you land the role of that company, then you're able to pay it forward for someone else coming behind you.
Yes, absolutely agree. And Oli, thank you so much for jumping into that as well. I'm going to drop a link here in the chat. And this is a brand new article that actually got released from LinkedIn on January 1. It talks about the best ways to prepare your profile for 2023. And there are a lot of new individuals that are jumping on LinkedIn. And obviously, as you all see in the chat, you can get a year of LinkedIn Premium for free if you're signing up as a military member or as a veteran. But the one thing that I'll share with you is that LinkedIn can offer you plenty of different opportunities. Not only just going out and finding a job, which you can do on LinkedIn, but you can also build your network. You can also work with other individuals that may be of interest to you. You can continue to build your network there. And the one thing that most individuals at this current moment don't know is that the search bar is a Boolean search bar. And if you don't know what Boolean searches are, it's using and or for you to be able to actually go out and search different things. And so if you know anything about Boolean search or you're interested in doing that, you can find things on LinkedIn that are not immediately or readily available to you. You can match up your own filtered searches for certain types of individuals. And the one thing I will tell you is absolutely 1000% leverage your network. I had a person reach out to me last week. They are moving to the Winston-Salem area. They're interested in the job in Advance. And they looked at me and they said, hey, you're the only person that I know at Ashley Furniture. And the only connection that we had was that he played disc golf at the undergrad school that I went to. And he saw it on my LinkedIn. He said, hey, you went to Ferrum. I was just there last week. Would love to get to know you and learn a little bit more. And that was how we started the conversation. That particular individual is looking forward to potentially getting an interview with us here in the next couple of weeks. So any small connection that you have to any person that's out there, whether it's a recruiter, whether it's a hiring manager, especially if you're open and you're nice and you're pleasant and you're approachable, from all of those things, you have a picture on your LinkedIn that actually shows your face. It doesn't have to be a glamour shot. It doesn't have to be the best picture in the world, but something that shows your face. Those are all very small steps towards, towards making LinkedIn work for you as well. I saw a question here earlier from the LinkedIn group about how often should you be posting? How often should you be, kind of marketing yourself? And obviously feel free to make your own posts, but one of the best ways to do that is to look at other people's activity, look at other people's posts, comment on other people's posts. I've made connections with individuals that I don't know solely by an idea that they listed in a post that I saw as a comment. And I reached out to that person. I said, hey, I really love what you said on so-and-so's post. And they said, great, let's get together and talk a little bit more about that. And we connected, and I've been connected on LinkedIn for now 2 years. Never met them, probably won't ever meet them. They live out in California. So, but as you're looking at those pieces of activity, I would encourage everyone to make sure that you're really checking some of the activity and that you're making your profile approachable. You're making your profile seem like it's active and seem like it's up to date. I will caution, and this is one thing that I've seen more frequently in the last several years. LinkedIn is not a traditional social media website. It is not a social media website. It is not a place where you can go and share anything and everything. Work-related memes are very funny. I've shared a couple of them myself, but getting into discussions around, really deep into politics or really deep into relatively controversial topics may turn someone off from being a connection of yours. So I'm not saying you can't go out and express your own opinions. Obviously, feel free to do that and do it in the way that you feel most appropriate or most possible. But do realize LinkedIn is a professional networking website, not Facebook, Twitter, Reddit, Instagram, all the other things.
Sam, that's a great one. You see it all the time, right?
Oh, yeah.
LinkedIn is definitely a professional platform. You want to make sure that you keep it there. And so we've kind of bounced a little over, which is we've talked so much and given so many great tips and so much awesome information. But I want to talk a little bit more about how those who are attending a virtual career fair and attending an interview, how they can ace it, right? Like how they can come out of there and just be rock stars and totally end up with a career that they want and a company that works for them, and a company culture that fits. So as we get into, what recruiters prefer or what the attendees of these career fairs prefer on the corporate side, what's your opinion on like video or chat or text when engaging with, conversation at a virtual career fair? Sam?
I'm going to just jump in here because this is something I'm very, very passionate about. When people send me a note during the virtual career fair and say, hey, do you mind if we chat? Hey, do you mind if we video chat? That gets me so excited. And maybe I'm a little nerdy. Maybe I'm just an extrovert and I need to talk to as many people as I can. But the text can be, the typing in the text is fantastic, especially if you are like me, potentially talking to more than one person at a time. But I love the personal connection piece. If I can spend some time and I can hear your voice and you can hear mine and I can hear your intonation and I can hear your inflection, a lot of those things go a long ways to really and truly making a good connection with the person. You may actually save some time. That's one thing that I have found is that, in a lot of cases, if I'm doing a really quick, voice chat with someone, we can get all the things that we need to ask and all the questions that we can done in 5 minutes. There have been plenty of times where I'm trying to type things out and I'm trying to send other information. I'm trying to send all those things, and it could be a 10 or 11 or a 12-minute conversation. And so for those of you who are trying to hit as many boots as possible, efficiency matters. And so, being able to take a phone call or take a voice call or a video call, in my opinion, that's a step up. That's a step up from the folks who, again, just type to text, which is totally fine, completely acceptable. I will take that 100 times out of 100. But if you're comfortable with it, you feel like that would be something that would take your profile or your person to the next level, I absolutely encourage it.
That's a great, I love when you can engage, right? And you can talk to someone and really get a feel for who that person is. It makes it a lot more personable. So Oli, in that lane, if that's the case, right? And you guys, prefer the discussions or the videos, how do you prepare for that? Like, what do you wear, right? What should you, how should you show up for your virtual career fair?
I'll start a bit to tie into what Sam was saying, and then I'll answer, I think, the second half. So I'm a realist. So I will tell you that in my experience, because we're using the Brazen platform, the video doesn't always work, right? So keep that in mind. When y'all are coming to the event, hopefully it does, fingers crossed. But I know I've participated in several Brazen events where the video worked, but we couldn't hear any audio at all. So we ended up texting or typing to each other while we saw each other's faces. So just plan accordingly to that. If the platform isn't working for you the way it should, or if your camera's not working, or whatever the case is, just go back to plan B. But here's some recommendations too, dealing with Brazen, is that you have the opportunity, and so does the companies, right, to do multi-chats. So you can chat with multiple people at the same time. Here's what you don't want to do. Spread yourself so thin to where you only get 10 minutes, or I think 15 minutes, or whatever the case is, with that chat feature. And then you're not paying attention to the company you're chatting with, because you're trying to multitask and try to chat with multiple companies at the same time. And half the time what we've seen is that some of these folks will be putting the wrong chats with the wrong company they're speaking with. So I would tell you, dedicate the time that you have with the company that you are speaking with, right? That's just my initial thing with it. Again, it's just some lessons learned from working with the platform for a bit. Secondly, if you do use the video feature, right, don't have your camera, like you can see, I have a background, Sam has a background, Kayla does not, right? But Kayla's background is still professional, right? It shows Navy there, it shows like family memorabilia behind it. Don't have kids running in the background, dogs jumping on your shoulders, or anything like that if you're going to do a video chat. Think of yourself and put yourself in a position on, if I was doing an interview with this company, what would I be looking like, and what would my backdrop be, right? That's very important. So another foot stomper is to pay close attention to that. A lot of people also don't do an op check on their video feature, right? So if you plan on using it, make sure it works. Because if not, you're going to spend half of your time on that chat just trying to get the feature to work. So make sure that they work, and you can do some op checks by just logging in. I think they can log in ahead or whatever, just check it, and then you can log out, right? So those are, again, some other stuff. But as far as what you would look like if in your appearance, look, what is going to make you stand out amongst everybody else on this virtual platform? That's what you got to think about. It's the secret sauce. So if you're doing it live and there's 100 people in line and they all have the exact same experience that you have, what is going to make you memorable to the company amongst the other 99? That's how you got to think about it, right? So if your only chance that you finally get in front of Sam and you're like really wanting to work for that company, or you're trying to, finally getting in front of USAA and you really want to work for that company, you don't know what everybody else talked about before you or who they're going to talk about after you. You just got to think about you. What's going to make you be memorable? What's going to make you stand out? So again, a couple of tips to that is, if you make a connection with that company and you're really interested with that company, ask if it's possible to connect with them outside of the career fair. Hey, do you mind if I connect with you on LinkedIn? If any of you are aware of Veterati, right? Do you mind if I connect with you on Veterati so I can do a mentorship call, right? Do some follow-up actions and be prepared for those follow-up actions going into the job fair. Don't go into the job fair, I'm looking for a job. Oh, they didn't tell me. Okay, I'm looking at this company, I'm looking for a job. Nope, right? Wrong approach. You're not going to get nowhere. You're going to beat your head against the wall. But if you go in with a holistic strategy on what you want to do, and your strategy is, I want to find my next career. I'm not looking for a job. I'm looking for a career, which means I want it with the right company. I want it that aligns for me, that makes me happy waking up every morning, right? You don't want to just get hired by a company just because it's a job. You want to find your career. So in order to do that, it's a holistic view. You got to look professional. You got to be professional. You got to come prepared, do your homework, have follow-up actions, right? So that you can continue that conversation going forward and ultimately land at your next career with the right company.
Absolutely. So so we've talked about like the expectations, right? So we go to the virtual career fair, we engage, we talk to individuals who are representatives from that organization, and we network, right? We build out and we learn and we grow and we ask questions. So what happens next? right? Like, so if someone is a good fit, you know, and wants to move forward, do they apply for a role beforehand? If so, I mean, do you pass them for a first interview? I know every process is a little bit different, but in that lane, what are some of the expectations for that process and how does it work within your companies? And again, every company is different, right?
Yeah, I've had it both ways. I've had plenty of individuals jump right in and say, hey, I applied for this job. Can we talk about it? I've also had people say, hey, I'm not really sure what I'm looking for. Or, hey, here's the things that I'm interested in. Maybe you can help match me with the right thing. And so it obviously goes either way. Obviously, when Oli was chatting earlier and said, hey, look on the job board. And if you see something that you're interested in, like, feel free to apply. I also have had individuals where I chat with them and they say, hey, I had initially targeted this job. I didn't click apply yet. I'm waiting to do that. But do you think this is right for me? Do you think this is the right type of opportunity? And again, you know, folks like Oli and myself, I'm not going to be the decision maker at the end. I'm not the person that says this is the absolute person we need to hire and they're going to get this job. But I am the person that says this person deserves an interview. This person deserves an initial phone call, or this person deserves an introductory call. And so I'm not going to be able to say, you're the perfect fit. Let's make you an offer today. But I will be able to say, hey, I would encourage you to apply to this, or your skills meet what we're looking for this job, or meet the primary profile. So if you want to apply, absolutely feel free to do so. And you can even share, hey, I applied for this job. Can you check in on it? Or can you see if you can push my name for it? I'm completely okay with that. But if you don't, it's not an issue on my end.
Yeah, I mean, think about it from the company's perspective, right? They want to hire the right person for the right job, but they also want to find the right person for the right career. So in doing that, they want you to stay. And if in the process, you don't find that role is a great fit for what you really want to do, and you won't be happy at it, don't apply for it, right? Don't put yourself in a position where you're going to want to bounce or just try to find another role, because it's not good for you and it's not good for the company, right? So when you're going through the process, you just need to make sure that, again, it's really coming down to understanding what your passion is and what you want to do, and aligning it to your experience and to what the companies are looking for. I mean, it's just a triad of the perfect storm, right? Is that the company has a need, you have the right skill sets to fit that need. And then when you look at the company holistically, the values of that company, the ethics around that company, what they're doing, where they're going in the future aligns to what you want to be a part of, right? I mean, that's the perfect storm of your next career. And so, I mean, I don't know really any other way to explain it, but I mean, that's kind of how I drive people. And I've talked a lot of veterans and military spouses out of roles because, and after talking with them, we realized that just wouldn't have been the right direction for them, and then pointed them in a different direction that was, and they're much happier doing that, and appreciated being talked out of certain roles, right? So I know it's awkward, and everybody's in their own transition journey and what they're trying to do as they're trying to find the career, but just keep that in mind, right? You don't want the foot in the door approach. That is a pet peeve of mine, especially, right? Because a foot in the door tells a company that, number one, you're just trying to find a spot anywhere. You don't care where, right? The secondly is that you might or might not like that role, meaning it could be a retention problem. Before we ever hire you, we might lose you, right? So there's a couple of different things that come kind of derogatory almost when you use the foot in the door. So I wouldn't use that approach, right? You can change that.
I want to pause you. What do you mean by foot in the door? Like, what can you elaborate a little? Like, I know
Yes.
the term, but we use it.
Oh
maybe.
yeah, no, absolutely. A lot of it's kind of been, I mean, honestly, in my experience, we learned that coming through our transition assistance program, leaving the military. For those of us who've gone through it, right? Hey, you need to find you need to find that foot in the door. And so we learn it there, and I think we carry that forward as we go through our transition of the foot in the door approach, right? And the foot in the door means, hey, I just want to find a spot at your company. Well, what I tells the company is that, well, what do you mean you just want to find a spot at our company? We don't want you to just find a spot. We want you to find your career, right? And so the foot in the door approach really just comes across almost negatively. I try to twist that around a little bit, right? And say, don't use that approach. Be very targeted in your approach. Foot in the door is more broad. It's kind of like, hey, what kind of jobs do you have for me? Because I'll take that one. That's the foot in the door mentality. It's more of, no, I know the company I want to work for. I know the role that I'm looking, or at least the area I want to get into. And it might take me a process to figure out exactly what the role is, but my approach was very specific, right? I'm not trying to get a foot in the door in project management. I'm trying to learn about what that is and how it aligns to my skills. If I need certifications or education that aligns to that as well, all of that is not a foot in the door approach. That's a very strategic approach on how you want to land with your next career. So I usually kind of sway people away from using it because I hear it all the time. Sam, I'm sure you've heard it, a bunch on that mentality, but to a company, it comes across different. So we've been trying to change the narrative on that.
A great point. So thank you for clarifying too. So we're approaching the end. Like I could sit here and talk to you guys forever and learn so much and continue these conversations because they're so helpful, right? And you guys have provided us with so much good information and some tips and some things that we can pass on to our audience and hopefully continue to learn and grow together as we find our next career path or our next company that has our career. Before we conclude our panel for today, I want to ask you guys if you have any tips or tricks for our audience. Make sure that my tip is make sure that you get registered for the career fair that's coming up. So don't forget, we'll put a link in the chat. Go ahead and get registered, upload your resume. But for our guests today, Ole and Sam, if you have any words of advice or words of encouragement for our audience today that can help them find success, please share them.
I tell you what, I'll start, and I will say this: job hunting is tough. It's a job, and there are plenty of times where I've been looking for a job and I've been told no. There are plenty of times where I've interviewed for a job and never heard back. And I'm like, oh, that kind of stinks. I really like that job. Or, hey, I really want to join this company, but I can't find a way in. The one thing that I can tell you is when you are looking for a job, each and every interaction, and I'm talking about like at the grocery store, at you're at another company event. There is way more about who you know, how you can connect, and all those things that mean just as much as all of the things on your resume. And so perseverance is one thing I know the military is really high on, being able to flex and to pivot when you need to. Job searching is tough. Don't let it get you down. I know it's difficult to hear no. I don't like hearing no in any sense, whether it's job focused or not, but just keep your head up and keep plugging away at it, and don't let one no turn you away from it. I've hired individuals at Ashley Furniture that did not get the job the first time, and a year later got the job that they really wanted. So the perseverance is a big factor. So don't let one no get you down. That person may not know your full potential, and there will eventually come a person who will figure out that they'll be the right fit.
Thank you,
Yeah.
Sam.
Yeah, I completely agree. And that goes back to the building relationships, right? That's what I kind of keyed it in on. The other thing that I would add to that, right, is you're in the process of building out your brand, right? We didn't talk much about that, but what your LinkedIn profile is really what you're wrapping around yourself as your brand. So make sure that it is informational, right? Make sure it comes across as kind of almost welcoming, right, for lack of better words, and make sure that it's just updated and it's constantly updated, because the number one place that recruiters go to search you is LinkedIn, right? If you apply for a job, I'm gonna tell you right now, they're gonna find you on LinkedIn, right? So make sure it's up to date. The last thing you want is to not have a LinkedIn profile when you apply for a role, because then they don't have any other way to validate you and they might pass you up. So just lastly, I would leave you with, and this is kind of a cliffhanger, right? Is understanding the difference between being qualified versus being competitive, right? Think about that for a minute, and then chew on it at the end of this call as you go into the job fair, right? You don't want to be just qualified for a role. We have tens of thousands of qualified candidates for our roles, right? We want you to be competitive for that role. which means you're beyond the qualifications, right? You have all the additional education potentially for that role, the additional experience. Never value your experience, right? Don't take experience off of your resume just because you think it might not be important. But at the same time, if it's on the resume, it needs to be pertainable to whatever that job you're applying for, right? So just a couple of those different tips is to think through what will make you stand out. Again, what's going to make you memorable, and that's what's going to make you competitive.
Thanks, guys, so much. Thank you as panelists for attending today and providing us with a ton of knowledge. You guys have been awesome. I look forward to doing it again. It's always fun talking to you. Hopefully sooner than later. And to our audience, thank you so much for attending today. We hope that you got something out of today and that you learned some things. Now go out there, find your next dream career, and go kick some butt. Thanks, guys.
Thank y'all.
Thanks all.